Okay, so hey guys, and welcome back to another predictions video. And in today's video, I'm going to be predicting the Joshua versus Dubois fight. And so, if you are new around here and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so. Like video if you do indeed like video, and let's get straight into it. So, going into this fight, Joshua is 28-3 with 25 KOs, and Dubois is 21-2 with 20 KOs. This fight is for the IBF World Heavyweight Title. Joshua's last fight was a win via KO in round 1 versus Ngannou, and Dubois' last fight was a win via TKO in round 8 versus Hrgovic. Dubois is 27 and Joshua is 34. Dubois has a 78-inch reach. To compare that, Dubois' reach is 78 inches. Compare that to Joshua's 82-inch reach. Joshua's losses have come versus Ruiz in 2019 and Usyk in 2021 and 2022, and Dubois' losses have come versus Joyce in 2020 and Usyk in 2023. And to speak a bit more about what I've just been saying, in general, this is the biggest boxing event in the UK, I believe, ever, and 96,000 fans at Wembley is a crazy stat. It's a crazy number, and in general, I'm very glad that they allocated more seating for this, just because I felt like an event like this deserves that. To be honest, when it was first announced, I wasn't too sure how well it would sell. Obviously, it's a stacked undercard, but as a main event, of course, Dubois isn't a massive name, so I wasn't sure, like I say, how well it would sell. But I think because it has sold so well, it shows just how much British boxing it was needing this type of a fight and was needing this type of event to really kind of bring the fans back and bring the eyes back on British boxing in general. And like I say, it's excellent to see that His Excellency has brought this event over to England this time, and it's great to see that they're kind of mixing out where they're going to go. And obviously, they went to America for Crawford, and there's even talks of them going to China for Zheli Zhang. So there's definitely lots of different options available. And yeah, a fight like this with a card like this, it's excellent to see in the UK. And obviously, there has been a big kind of impact that Riyadh season has had. It's kind of brought both these fighters really back to where they belong. Like, realistically, when you kind of think of before Riyadh season where both fighters were, Dubois had just lost to Usyk and was being kind of labelled a little bit more as a quitter when things got really tough, and Joshua had just fought Hellenius, so he was seen as gun shy, and coming off the Usyk loss, he's seen as like he wasn't able to fight the same way in which he once was and everything like that. So I think for both fighters, Riyadh season has really helped give them big opportunities, give them big fights, return them back to a high level, and show the fans that they are able to still compete at the top level. And of course, now this being for a world title, obviously it realistically shouldn't be, because obviously Usyk is on paper the undisputed heavyweight champion. He should be that. Of course, he was that for a small amount of time, but then he didn't defend. It was weird. He didn't defend against Hrgovic for too long, but then I think by the time that IBF belt was meant to be fought against Hrgovic had lost to Dubois, and Usyk, of course, had already beaten Dubois, so why would he go back and fight him again when the rematch with Fury is there? It's weird. It probably, like I say, shouldn't have been the case that this is for that heavyweight title, but when you kind of do see this as a fight, I suppose there is deserving of at just the magnitude of the fight for there to be some sort of belt on the line, even if it isn't fair that it's for the IBF heavyweight title. But either way, like I say, it makes for an interesting one, a very interesting fight. And I suppose when you speak about them more individually as fighters, some topics that I wanted to kind of list through. Joshua's effect on boxing is something in which has been talked about a lot, but of course, it's still there now. There's nothing that's kind of changed about that. He still has the eyes on him. He's kind of labeled the UK as not really liking him, not really giving them that respect, and kind of underappreciating him, the fans. But I don't know. Either way, he's had an excellent effect on boxing. I'm sure even somebody like a Dubois, when he was coming up, was watching Joshua and getting inspired by him, and it is that kind of next generation coming through type fight this is. As of course there is that bit of an age difference, and they're both at perhaps different points in their careers. I mean, Dubois obviously has had very tough tests and has fought Usyk and has fought for a lot of the belts, and Joshua obviously has also been through a lot of tough tests, but he's just been there that bit longer. He's just experienced a bit more of, he's been that next generation coming up, and he's won as being that next generation, and he's perhaps even been the underdog a little bit at times against even like a Klitschko earlier on in his career, but then being able to push through and get to where he is now, where he has faced adversity, has gone through that hardship, and now gone to this point. And so, yeah, they've both gone through similar type of things, but Dubois still that a little bit earlier on in his career. And um, obviously, I think there's one kind of main big topic in which a lot of people have been talking about this week, and that's Don Charles not being around for Dubois. Is that a talk about? There is talk about Dubois' dad kind of falling out with Don Charles and everything like that, but there has been evidence in which that has happened. I believe in that last fight versus Hergovich, Dubois' dad kind of pushed Don Charles out of the way a bit and kind of threw himself in and like to become the main coach and really to be saying the commands to Dubois. And it seems as though Dubois could possibly listen to his dad that bit more, could possibly be wanting to push that bit more when he has got his dad being the main person in his corner. So there has been talks about there a little bit of a fallout, but then there's also been said that Don Charles is just ill and doesn't really want to get involved in fight week. But the magnitude of this fight week, even if you are ill, you do kind of want to come in and still get involved even a little bit. And I don't know. I'm not too sure the whole situation. He says Dubois that he's going to be there on fight night. Don Charles, I had the privilege of being at the press conference yesterday, so they talked about that, and he said that he seemed like he was going to be there on fight night. So we'll have to wait and see if that's the case or not. Obviously, there is that talk of the previous sparring between the two of them. Obviously, sparring stories are sparring stories. They're not really too important, especially because there probably was quite a while ago between the both of these two. But there's been talks from people like Anthony Fowler, who was there, who said that Dubois cracked him with a great shot. Dubois, I mean, Joshua said himself in the press conference that Dubois did hit him with a great shot and did stumble him and did hurt him. And Dubois has been claimed to have this crazily high power, but is that really? I don't necessarily know if you can read too much into that. So, like I say, sparring stories are sparring stories. I'm sure Joshua's hurt Dubois at times with shots. They said that they did loads of rounds, but like I say, I'm not too sure. It's an interesting thing, but it's not really something that I'm sure really means too much. I mean, it's the same with the undercard, in which I'm going to talk about in a moment. There is a sparring story there, which I'm sure doesn't really mean too much. I suppose just kind of helps grow the fight that bit more. Of course, Joshua coming off that win versus Ngannou was a very shocking way, I suppose, in which he did it. A lot of people were wanting him to go out there and really put on a statement and really put on a show, but perhaps there was little bits of doubt, thinking obviously Ngannou had that success versus Fury, so perhaps if he could do that to Fury, then he could do that to Joshua easily. But Joshua was really on it, was really switched on, was very disciplined, picks his shots excellently. Ngannou made them mistakes. Joshua walked Ngannou onto them shots, and then that's of course how he got him out of there in the end. And he really highlighted that power in which he had, which is something perhaps we haven't really properly seen in a little while. That just pure power in which Joshua has had. I mean, he didn't fully show it against Wallen. He had him hurt at times, but I don't necessarily know if he fully showed it. He Against Hellenius, he got a big knockout there, which is a bit of a one-punch one, but I think Hellenius was waiting there for ages to be kind of a punching bag, just waiting around. Franklin, he didn't show it. Then, of course, Usyk, before, he didn't really get a chance to hit Usyk clean at all. So there's been a while since Joshua had that clean knockout, and I think this has just helped his confidence tenfold, realistically. And there was, of course, that doubt about Joshua being reluctant to throw, being hesitant at times after the Usyk losses. But like I say, I feel like that Ngannou stoppage, even though it was a knockout that was kind of set up for him realistically, because Ngannou was making them mistakes. It's still going to grow confidence a lot, and confidence is in boxing probably one of the most important factors. Dubois' win though was a very impressive win versus Hergovich. It was a fight in which had a bit of a build up to it, but in general, it was a pretty much a one-sided beatdown from Dubois past the early couple rounds, and a similar kind of fight to that of the Miller one, except from Hrgovic was just unable to push Dubois like Miller was a little bit more because Miller was a lot bigger, but Hrgovic was just shown to not realistically be that high level of a heavyweight. I'd never really thought he realistically was since the Zhang fight, and yeah, Dubois really highlighted that and went through and showed his kind of imposing style, his forcing style, his want to be on the front foot, his now mindset where he doesn't want to get bullied by anyone and things like that. So that was a good showing from him. Of course, there is that reach kind of difference between the two fighters. Both of them have got good jabs. Joshua's is an excellent jab. Dubois, when he uses it, is a good jab. But Joshua, of course, is going to be wanting to set shots up off that jab, I'm sure. But Dubois is going to want to probably get in close a lot of the time. So it's going to be interesting dynamic to see how that works out. And I'm going to now speak about a few of the fights on the undercard, and we'll start off with Boatsi versus Hutchinson for the WBO interim world light heavyweight title. I think that Hutchinson will win via unanimous decision. It's been an interesting build-up, a bit of an entertaining one. I mean, being there for the presser yesterday was very funny, to be honest. From Hutchinson, was was probably going for Boatsi, but um, Boatsi has been able to be around the high level for a while. He's gotten wins at that higher level more so than that of Hutchinson. Hutchinson, this is a huge opportunity for him. Of course, last time out he looked very impressive versus Craig Richards and put on a dominant display, but Craig Richards looked poor in that fight. Hutchinson, though, has always been said to be an excellent amateur and to have these skills and always been hyped up. Especially as of recent, there's been a lot more people coming out and saying, "Oh, Hutchinson was an excellent amateur," and now he's kind of maybe that's helped push him a little bit more to get him into this position. But Boatsi has somebody like I say who's been around the top level. He's coming off a very good win versus Dan Aziz, in which he looked pretty dominant throughout. I don't think Dan Aziz was able to really keep up with the shots in which Boatsi was throwing. But then before that, there's been fights like the Stepien fight, in which was a bit of a poor showing, but I just don't really think he was really up for that much. The Craig Richards fight for himself, which was an excellent performance, and so they're both fighters who are quality fighters. I just think that Hutchinson is going to be able to be more relaxed, be able to throw combinations a little bit smoother, won't be bullied by Boatsi, but might be comfortable on the back foot as well, and will be able to pick them shots a bit nicer. I think Boatsi can have a bit of a time when he is just being a bit flat-footed and then can become a little bit off balance at times, but I think Hutchinson is going to be able to capitalise upon that. I think Hutchinson is going to get caught with shots, but I think he's going to be able to deal with that, and that's where I still believe that Hutchinson will win. And like I say, it's a huge win for him if he wins, and then progressing him on. I mean, WBO interim will then put him in one of the positions to be in line for Bivol versus Beterbiev's the winner of that. Do I think he would go on to fight them next? No, I very much doubt it. But like I say, it still puts him in an amazing position compared to where he once was in his career. Moving on now to Kakache versus Warrington for the IBO World Super Featherweight title, in which I think Kakache will win via TKO in round 5. It's weird in general. IBF again being weird with the whole IBF rankings and the IBF belt not being on the line for this because of Warrington not being ranked by the IBF, even though he has fought for that IBF title in the past, is weird. But either way, we have this IBO title on the line. Kakache versus Warrington as a fight, I think it's going to gel perfectly. I think it's going to be a very high paced from the very beginning fight. Kakache is coming off an excellent performance versus Cordina, where there was that shot in which landed, which was a bit of an illegal shot after the ref didn't really kind of jump in and stop things when he did throw it. But he still was punishing versus Cordini. He was more animal-like realistically, and just didn't really let him out of his sights, and really was very physical in close. Warrington was coming off that performance versus Lee Wood, where he was also very kind of animal-like to an extent, and was trying to come forwards, was winning a lot of the fight, was making it a bit of a brawl, but then just walked onto a shot and then really got hurt, damaged. And I think Kakache might be able to hurt Warrington. I think he has that bit more physical strength and that bit more power than that of Warrington. So if they go toe to toe, in which I believe they will, I think it's going to be, like I say, a very high pace, but a high pace fight in which we won't be able to be manageable at that pace, in which I think Kache will win, like I say, via stoppage in round 5. And then the final fight in which I'm going to speak about being Denny versus Shiraz for the EBU European middleweight title, in which I think Shiraz will win via unanimous decision. It's an interesting matchup, this one, of course. It was talked about for a while in which Shiraz was going to face Eubank Jr., but Eubank Jr. realistically had a lot to lose if he went and fought Shiraz, because Shiraz hasn't really got too much really going for him as of yet to really entice somebody like a Eubank Jr., entice a name like him. But Denny, I think that's a fight that makes sense. Possibly you would think that the winner of this is most probably going to go on to fight Denzel Bentley, even if that's not really a step up performance, yeah, step up fight in my opinion. But Shiraz has that big backing from His Excellency and is one of the Riyadh season ambassadors alongside Jared Anderson and Terence Crawford. And he's looked excellent in his last fight. He was coming off that stoppage win versus Amo Williams, in which was a brutal stoppage, realistically, where she was throwing shots in from angles, from positions where it didn't look like you could generate that power, but he seemed to be hurting Amo Williams a lot. And there was times in which he got caught with straight shots, in which Denny might be able to do if he can push them shots in. But I think Denny is not going to be able to match Shiraz. I think Shiraz might have to take a couple of rounds to get comfortable. I don't think he's going to be able to stop him, even though he has got the power that he has and is on the stoppage winning streak that he has. I just don't think he's going to be able to stop Denny, because I think Denny's going to be very tough, very in your face. Denny is known to making fights perhaps a little bit more dirty, that little bit more rugged. I believe a lot of his fights have maybe not ended, but have had head clashes in them. So, and he's coming off 2 wins in a row with head clashes. So it's going to be probably a bit messy at that point. But I think Shiraz is going to be able to deal with Denny. I think he's going to be able to counter him with shots, in which, similar to what Felix Cash was doing at times, but just be able to be that bit more spiteful with it, be very accurate with his work, be able to deal with the inside work better, be able to cover up better. Shiraz is good at catching shots and then responding back like he's not even been hit with any in the first place. And yeah, I think he's going to be able to win by unanimous decision and perhaps make Denny look a little bit out of his depth to an extent. But then he could even have success if he can push Shiraz up onto the ropes and dig into the body and invest and make it that dirty fight. But I just don't see it being able to maintain it like that. And I think, like I say, Shiraz will have success timing Denny onto shots. Going back to the main event though, Joshua, as a fighter, I believe he is a patient fighter now. That's most likely the Joshua in which we've got from the Usyk fights. He's not really been the same since. Even from the Ruiz fights, he's not really been the same since. But now he's at a point in his career where perhaps he could be going on to a second prime or a prime. Like, it's weird to think, but it could be the case. I think he's patient. I think he picks his shots. He pushes his shots through the guard really nicely. He's relaxed. He's balanced. He has that one-shot KO power. So he's a completely different type of fighter in which the Joshua was when he was once coming up. He's a lot more disciplined now. I think that actual boxing technique of his is improved a lot, and a lot of fighters you see try to become that boxer, try to become that more technical fighter, and it just doesn't work for them because that's not their style. That's not how they're able to get success. And when they do that, they get shown up. They get just completely outfought because they're a bit lost of what to do. But Joshua perhaps had a few fights where it was a little bit like that, where he was struggling when he was trying to be a boxer, but now it seems like it is working for him and he's pushed through it. And with the team in which he has with Ben Davison now, I think it's excellent. He resets well. That kind of links into the kind of relaxed mindset in which he has. He can fight on the front foot or the back foot. I think his front foot counters are excellent. I think Dubois' front foot counters and timing are also pretty good as well. He's very accurate, Joshua. He has them very good fundamentals, and like I say, sets up from his jab excellently. He plants his feet well and typically does that very well. He probably wants to be a bit more of a mid-range type fighter now than perhaps that in-close type fighter in which he once was, just because he wants to plant his feet. Negatives about him, I think he can perhaps sometimes wait a bit too long before his shot's still a little bit at points. But obviously against Ngannou, we saw them mistakes early and was able to capitalise on them early. But I still perhaps think that we might be seeing him wait a bit too long at times. Uh, I think he has that less output. Dubois is definitely going to be coming on with a high output, and Joshua's going to have to be able to deal with that. I think perhaps there is a little bit of predictability at times from Joshua's work. Maybe, like I say, he has them fundamentals, he has some straight shots that work really well for him, but perhaps he's becoming a bit more predictable with that now. But Dubois hasn't really got the best of head movement or anything like that. So I think even if Joshua is perhaps predictable with his work, I just don't know if he's going to be able. Dubois is going to be able to read it that well. Perhaps he's even overlooking Joshua here. Dubois will have to wait and see. His head's on the line a lot of the time, I believe. Joshua, I think he moves a bit better than that of Dubois, but I think his head's still on the line. Obviously, he's been hurt in fights. I mean, he's been dropped flush in fights and been hurt in fights, and so Dubois could definitely hurt him with fights. Everybody with shots. Everybody's been saying how much power Dubois has, so he could definitely land and hurt him. I think throwing combinations, Joshua isn't always got the best of shot variety in actual throwing of combinations now compared to what he once was. Perhaps that's a loss of aggression, but at the same time, he still has that aggression because the power when he throws is still there. I think he can obviously become frustrated, and I think that self doubt might still be in the back of his mind. Similar to that of Dubois, I think this could definitely be a fight in which whoever gets their rhythm, I think they're both rhythm fighters, they both have to be able to find their flow, find their groove, and whoever doesn't get that, I think mentally could be shown up. We'll have to wait and see, especially if it goes into the later rounds. Obviously, there's talks about, everybody's kind of saying that it's not going to go into later rounds, it's going to be a stoppage, but we'll have to wait and see. And I think remembering his body work, he does throw well to the body, it's just remembering it, but I think that's similar to that of Dubois as well. Dubois as a fighter, he imposes himself physically, he is typically going to be wanting to be kind of in your face and always a presence that you have to be wary of. He's a front foot type fighter a lot of the time, but he is able to fight on the back foot at points as well. He wants to bully, he's strong, he's powerful. I think that might take a couple of rounds for him to be able to get through a jab or to be able to, really close that distance, and that's where Joshua could have success. But he does typically want to bully, and when he does get through, like he did against Hrgovic, like he did against Miller, that's when he can really let his hands go, find his confidence, find his rhythm, and then have success. I think he's aggressive, he has a good work rate. Perhaps he can look tired at times, but he's still just kind of forcing his shots through and throwing them. He's got solid timing, he's got big overhands in which, like I say, Joshua's definitely going to have to be wary of. He's used to being the underdog, so I don't think anything like that's going to phase him nerves-wise or anything. He lets his hands go. I think he can fight at a mid or an in-close range, perhaps in-close better than that of Joshua. I'm not too sure, we'll have to wait and see. He cuts off the ring well, I believe. I mean, he definitely did that against Miller, even against Hrgovic. They both perhaps allowed Dubois to cut off the ring with them because they were really tired and weren't really giving much out, but Dubois was in their face and weren't really letting them move. And he always responds whenever he gets hit, typically Dubois, or at least tries to. Negatives about him, I think obviously there is that thing about him pushing through. We'll have to wait and see if he can push through if the times get tough and the times get difficult. I think he can go back and forth in straight lines. I think there is definitely defensive weaknesses a lot more there. So with Dubois, I think Joshua has a bit more tight over of guard now and is a bit more switched on defensively than that of Dubois. And there's definitely defensive gaps in which are there open every time that Dubois attacks. And Joshua, if he can time him onto a shot, could definitely hurt him. He has messy footwork at times. Dubois has a low guard, has wide shots a lot of the time. I don't think his hand speed's anywhere near as much so as that of Joshua's. I think his accuracy can be off. He does cross his feet. He kind of walks onto shots. I think he can force the fight a little bit at times and can have his head on the line a lot of the time. Joshua is the favourite for this fight, and I think that Joshua will win via KO in round 4. Like I mentioned, if this goes into the later rounds, that's typically where Dubois can get in close, find success, and push you up against the ropes. But Joshua, I just don't think I can see it happen. I could see, like I mentioned, Joshua timing Dubois onto a shot and then really being able to hurt him from that. And then perhaps with the power in which Joshua has, the way that he does really load up on his shots, that's where he can find success and hurt him. Just will be interesting to see if Joshua is able to deal with footwork wise if he's on the back foot and if he's getting pushed back. We'll have to wait and see. But like I say, I believe a relatively early stoppage win for Joshua, which realistically, if he manages to do, is a really statement performance, statement win for him, and is pretty much getting him right back in the mix with the top guys. Realistically, I mean, when I'm saying the top, I mean Fury and Usyk, because then he could go on to fight the winner of Fury Usyk, even the loser of Fury Usyk. He could go on to fight, because then fights I believe would still make sense. Perhaps Usyk, if he does lose, they might go on to a trilogy, so that could slow things up a little bit for Joshua. And it seems like Joshua's wanting to stay active with his excellency now and everything like that. So something like a Parker or a Caballel, who's ranked at the top in the IBF, could be options, but they're not going to be as big of an options, of course, as that of Fury Usyk. So we have to wait and see most definitely how that goes. But yeah, that is it for today's video. Hope you did enjoy. Like the video if you didn't, like this, subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.